who doesn't know enough about India, that doesn't know enough about.
Definitely, yes.
Whilst I definitely watch it and don't go, this is a fact, this is a documentary, everything here is totally real. It does, I think this movie opens the eyes of a lot of Westerners to what India could be, and it made me want to look things up and find out more. And I think as long as people don't view this film as 100% what it's like, then I think there's a lot to learn. I think a lot of people don't know about the caste system, and they don't know about. I think the concept of the rooster coop was interesting. Did that ring true for anyone else? Because I don't think that's just an Indian thing. It's the servant master. If I am not supplicant and sucking up and doing the job the best I can, then it's going to essentially, like a gangster, fall back on my family. You've got to play the game, and then you reach a certain level of authority and corruption and power, and you can do what you want. I think that's universal. Anyway.
It is, exactly. That's what I'm saying. Now, olden days, it used to take place, some of it, but now because of technology and the media, it goes viral.
Yes, it does, when things are particularly bad. What did we think? What did we think about the acting performances? I didn't know much about Ardash Gurav, who plays Balram. Does anybody want to talk about how they felt his performance was? I personally loved how I truly believed he was this mustachioed, ponytailed entrepreneur at the end, but also could play this innocent, pure boy at the beginning. Does anybody want to talk about him at all?
This is the first time I ever saw him. Never seen him before. I've seen another guy. What's his name? His master.
His master, right? Yeah.
And his master's dad and brother as well, and Priyanka, obviously.
Yeah, he's much more established.
Yeah. So, but I like the film, honestly. I mean, it's everything in there, from, as you said, from corruption to even when all the drivers were staying in different places underneath the big building, it's like a really high-tech building, and they were slipping down in the cellars, and that they were comparing their life with their master's life as well. But that's a fact. I think it is a fact.
I'm so glad you brought that up, because I think some of the movie's most affecting moments that made me feel the most emotional is when he'd arrived in the big city and was counting the levels of the building. He was looking at all the floors. And I just remember when I was that age, I had that same sense, but you really feel a sense of wonder of, how can this be? I was in a village just moments ago, and now there's a building this tall. And I found that whole underworld thing really interesting, and the relationship between him and the other guy, who doesn't actually have a character name. I think he's just called Vitiligo Man. I thought their relationship between him and the other drivers was really interesting. Did anybody else think that this was going to be a crime movie? Did anybody else think this was going to be maybe a Goodfellas type film?
No, Goodfellas, you're talking, that was really bad, Goodfellas.
It's just it strikes me as one of those films that I didn't want to tell you about in detail beforehand, because it might seem like a crime movie, like he's working his way up the rung, but it's not that, is it? There's
I think it's a story about a life from a poor village boy to becoming rich, and like how they struggle and how they go through their life.
For sure.
And, so that wasn't a thriller, But when Priyanka knocked over that little girl, that was really the photography was good. It was all the roads were empty and slightly. It was dark. It wasn't lit up as well, and that I just went like that. Oh my God!
Yeah. It's nicely done. Are you guys familiar with the way our minds can play tricks on us in cinema, in not showing it? Not really. It actually makes the image in your mind more powerful. I think famously this is done in Psycho, obviously Alfred Hitchcock's classic, where you see a certain amount in the shower, but not too much. And your mind actually is more fearful of what it might have seen than what it did see. You know, showing dodging the cow, dodging the car, and then hitting that and the bump, I thought was actually really well done. I personally just loved seeing how the movie lets you laugh and enjoy both sides. So there are moments in the movie where you're kind of chuckling at the ignorance of our hero, of Balram. He's always saying, sir. He thinks he can go to the shop and get them an internet. If you remember that bit. Let me just get you some internets from the shop. Yeah. But the movie also lets you have it the other side, because you have the reverse snobbery when they are going to his village or towards that village, and he starts doing the
Yeah.
and I loved that. Did anybody else respond to those moments where you get to see both sides of the power dynamic?
What I liked about the film, really, that I opened my eyes wide, was the end bit. When the whole family was wearing all this jewelry, got money, and you know, they were so happy. They were same people, but a lot with a lot more on their hands. And that's because the boy who was their boy went to the city and made it happen.
Yes, you had a sense of pride for him.
Yes.
It's funny that you feel happy and proud for him whilst at the same time going, but how did he do it? I just feel like he went through so much, he endured so much, he had so much pain that because of the magic of cinema, you want to forgive him.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to forgive him, but I was just comparing his life.
Yeah.
What he was when he was little and what he became afterwards. Yet the parents and the other children were just the same.
Yeah. I also found it interesting how I found myself really wanting him to serve well.
Yeah.
Isn't that strange? You're watching this man having to massage the legs of this boss called the Stork, and it's ugly and it's horrible. But you kind of want him to do well.
Yeah.
Do you remember that bit at the train station where he remembers that he doesn't like potatoes?
Yeah.
And I thought to myself, God, good for you, because then he'll like you more. And then a scene later, you have to go, but he's a bad guy. You don't. But that's the system. I think it keeps finding new and interesting ways of highlighting how unfair the system is.
Yeah.
It is. He was treated really badly by his master.
Master, yes.
And driving around, watching him draw out money from the bank.
Yeah.
That alone, seeing the money, playing with the money, just how it's so disposable. I've got to say, I loved, whilst she was also a bad person, I loved seeing the great socialist win, because it meant that the family had been betting on the wrong horse. I just found that really pleasing in a kind of cynical way. Did anybody else have any standout moments in the movie that kind of stuck with them? What other scenes really meant a lot to you watching this film? Any thoughts at all? Perhaps when he goes back home. Nicole, please.
Sorry, hi. Oh God, the feedback's back. Anyway, you know the night after the little kid was killed.
Yes.
I don't know why I'm echoing, but I'm sorry about that.
Keep on going. It'll shake off.
Thank you. When he went back and they were really like happy and welcoming and accommodating, and it really, like, after the murder, and he was really, I don't know, they greeted him really nicely as if they were like friends, and I was really happy because I thought at last they were like bonding together, like they were seeing him as their equal or something like that. but then they made him sign a confession saying that he was responsible for it, and that made me really sad actually, because
Yeah, that's a scene well worth discussing, because just to highlight your point, I think if it were Ashok and Pinky, if it were that couple and they were in charge of solving the situation, all right, run this with me, they would have just gone, we're best friends now and we're in this together. I'm going to raise you up. You're maybe going to be my apprentice. You can tell they would have kind of solved it with kindness. But when obviously he spoke to his father, the stork, that's when it became legal. That's when it became vicious. And I think the giving of the paneer to soften him up was the worst of it all. Did anybody else just go, if you're going to bribe him, give him money this big. Don't give him a tiny bit of food. They think so little of him that when they're getting him to sign his life away, it's a bit of food. That'll soften the blow. Sit on the sofa, not on the floor. In that moment, I didn't want him to kill anybody, obviously, but I really, really found that such a vicious decision, cynical and clinical. Did anybody else enjoy the moments, and this is where I compare it to Goodfellas, where he starts stealing from them? Do you remember that moment? There's the montage of different thefts. He takes petrol, he overcharges him for repairs, he starts building up a bit of cash. Did anybody else enjoy that? Maybe just a bit?
Well,
Paul's nodding.
He didn't have any choice, let's start with something small. And
it's so interesting you say that. He didn't have a choice. I kind of agree. I do kind of agree. To keep sane, is that what you're saying? He had to do it because otherwise it's just madness. Yeah, Paul's thumbs up. He agrees. It was the only option he had because otherwise he'd just lose it. But I think, was anyone else aware of the concept of a white tiger? Because there's loads of animals in this movie. Did anybody else have that sense beforehand?
No.
Paul had heard of it. He's nodding. I think the movie introducing me to the concept of once every generation, there's the kind of sly fox. I kind of like that idea. And I think one of the saddest moments of the movie is very early on when he's in the school and the man says, you can speak great English.
Yeah.
You have talent. The great socialist wants to sponsor children to go on scholarships and improve their lives. You're going to go and do it. And you're like, this is the movie. I'm going to watch a kid work his way up. It's all actually going to be great. He's going to learn. He's going to be educated. He's going to get that job. He's going to things will happen. So in the third scene, your heart's just, one of my earpods came out. That's how sad it was. I truly found that one of the saddest moments. And what is his job? Hitting coal with a hammer.
Yeah, that as well as when father has TV and he walks to, that was awful. That was really, really heartbreaking to see. Nobody should go through with that.
It's like child labor, and mostly child labor. That's what it is.
No, he didn't have money. He was doing, then we had TB.
Yeah, he had tuberculosis and was coughing up blood.
Yeah.
And when they walk all that distance to the next 3 villages.
That was awful. That was really, really awful.
It's interesting how it both the film allows you to pity Balram, obviously, of course, but also not like him as well. I think it's a great movie because it has all these different shades. It gives you a lot of detail. So it's not just a simple, and the master deserved it. There's a real level of detail along the way that helps you understand how he got there and how that decision seemed rational and reasonable at the time. I don't know. I really admired the movie for that, because it could have been just a vindictive, rich people are bad, but it shows that we're all a bit bad, you know?
There are bad people, but there are some good people as well. They have sponsored children to study. But like I said, it's not that many, but there are some good people in riches who are. But when you get bad, this bad, that's what it stands out. Really bad. How they treat, even slapping, and just because he's doing that job, just slap him and ask him to. It does happen, ask him to suffer which he didn't commit, and he was going to suffer for it. I think that's in a way what he did was, I think it took a revenge. It's okay, he did the right thing because they made him to do that.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, is that's not the right way.
No, for sure. And I think it's interesting how it shows how this rolls downhill. You know, typically people go to therapy to not deal with themselves, but to deal with their bosses and their parents, right? And then they can't affect them, so they have to work on themselves. But you see him pass on his pain to his cousin.
Yeah.
And when he says that line, turn around, I'm going to hit you again. And then he doesn't. I think that's his character almost in a moment. He's corrupted and contaminated by the system he's in, by the people who he's been around, by corruption. But he, whilst not being a bad guy, isn't as bad as the generation before.
No.
And is that solace? I don't know. But the fact that he doesn't hit, isn't it mad? I'm discussing, he doesn't hit him twice. Isn't that good? But considering what he's been through, it is some sort of improvement. I want to talk a bit more about that actor who plays our lead. He was an unknown, just to be clear. And this is a quote from the director. I didn't want to see a rich, successful actor playing the part of that underclass underdog who is going to eventually do something crazy in the film. Ardash blew me away in the audition. He's got this big winning smile, which was very important, obviously, and he's very charming, and you like him immediately. We've talked about this before. That X Factor, which is obviously a massive TV show, has its origins in, I don't know what it is about them, but I like them. And he has that. If you don't pay attention, you look at him again and he's got this laser on you and you don't know what he might do. And our director Ramin wanted to have that double layer of, he's wonderful and lovely and charming, but also I don't quite trust him. So I think it was very sensible not to go for somebody who was very well known. We've also got some great music in this film. They really mess with different kinds of music. We get to see that kind of patronizing moments in the car when he's hearing gorillas. You know, dun, 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 dun. I'll stop singing. But when that moment, he goes, do you like that song? And you can't tell whether our hero actually likes the song or is just saying he does to please his master. Yeah. There are so many little moments like this. The other story is that I mentioned earlier that Priyanka Chopra produced this in part. And it's because she was on Twitter and she saw that someone was starting to adapt it. And she was such a fan of the book. She immediately got involved and said, please, I need to be part of this. Working alongside Ava DuVernay and a bunch of others. And I think, I can't give her all the credit, but I love that this movie, the book has inspired so many real reactions of, we've got to do this book justice. But I think it really benefited the final product. It would have been easy to cast bigger stars. I think Netflix giving them the creative leeway to do what they wanted really benefited. It would have been just so easy to go, let's get 3 famous people. That'll sell tickets. But that wasn't the case here. I think that's very much for its to its credit. Are there any other key moments we want to talk about? We could talk all. Carry on, sorry.
I think the way Priyanka was treated, being a lady, was come from America.
Yeah, let's talk about that.
She's gone to India, and she's educated, her and her boyfriend well, I think boyfriend, not husband.
Not husband, yeah.
And the way,
Oh, no, they weren't married. They weren't married.
and I didn't like it, you know, when she was sort of
Wore
suggesting.
trousers.
Yeah, and she wanted to help the Balram quite a lot, you know. She wanted him to become rich, what, not rich, at least
Successful on his own terms, yeah.
And but the older guy, what's his? I can't remember the name.
The stork or the mongoose.
Yeah, they were really rude to Priyanka. You know, then eventually she leaves the place. You know, goes away.
There really aren't that many female characters. We have the Great Socialist and we have Priyanka. That's who we have.
Yeah.
And I suppose maybe I would have liked more women in the film. But I understand that's what the book was. And there's only so many changes you could make. It's interesting to see the reverse. We're coming at it from a Western perspective going, sure, she can wear trousers. Why can't she have a conversation with her husband and decide things together?
Yeah.
I think it's interesting to have our perspective changed. And again, that's another reason why movies are incredible. And I think they're better at it than TV. They let you go, hang on, what would it be like from the other side? Suddenly this woman in fashionable clothes with her Western ideas and wants to have a certain coffee a certain way seems a bit strange. And I did enjoy that. I also found it interesting when I had my own ignorance exposed. I'd forgotten that the Taj Mahal was a tomb. So when they made that point, I was like, oh yeah. And it's nice to be humbled like that. So would you guys recommend this to friends? Would you tell people to go and watch The White Tiger now that we've put it together, getting a nod from Paul?
Yes.
If you're not thinking about sharing this with friends, what is stopping you from going, go watch this movie, it's great?
I would recommend it to anybody, you know, because
Anybody, your double thumbs up.
it's like Slumdog Millionaire, you know, when we first saw it.
Yes,
And
it's like the darkly comic version of that.
Yeah. So I would recommend it to somebody, yes. Why not? Yeah.
Liz, I think Liz isn't so sure. What do you think, Liz?
Yes, I'm not so sure. Partly because I haven't been well. I haven't been concentrating that well, so I've just been listening. But I watched the film mostly this afternoon, and I did find I hadn't grasped a lot of what people are discussing. Okay. So I think maybe before I recommend it to someone else, I would watch it again. Yeah. You know, okay. with the knowledge that people have shared. You know.
I do think that if people come at this movie and are told, no offense, that it's like Slumdog Millionaire, I think they'll be shocked. Yeah. Because whilst they both show the dark side, this is, I think, much more barbed and spiky. More of a shake you by the shoulders type movie, whereas Slumdog Millionaire does have moments of sheer joy.
I think the other thing that got me just before I went into the meeting was seeing on the news the situation in India with all the increased cases of COVID.
Sure.
And that the very poor are just not there's just not the available healthcare or even oxygen, and
the space there's too many people in one space.
Yeah.
And yes, literally. Oxygen gas. I agree. I don't know if anybody else has been finding this, but during lockdown, I'd often watch movies and see people that are very close together, and I'd go, "Whoa, what you doing?"
Yeah.
And there's a bit where our hero is shouting at the beggar in the street.
Oh yes, yeah.
And that really hit me. It really hit me. He feels mad, and is behaving likewise. But I found, yes, that it's so few films are set in India. Billions, millions of people live there.
It's an overpopulated country. It's too many people they can't handle. I think that's the problem. Is too many people.
1.3 billion.
1.3 billion. There we go. And you and you just think about COVID in there. I mean, we won't go into that, but Liz, you are right. Whilst it's not the purpose of the film, it does add to what we're seeing. There's no denying it. But yes, I think it does an interesting line in comedy. At times it's quite funny. It's very, very dark. But I also suspect that some people might find it just flat out upsetting. I think there are moments that they just find very upsetting because I don't think it has, for a universal recommendation for me, something like Peanut Butter Falcon is a go and watch it, you're going to have a great time, right? You're just going to have a great time. I don't need to worry. This movie doesn't give you moments of joy. And the moments of joy it gives you are bitter and loaded with meaning. And I think it's got a really bouncy, lively plot, loads of stuff happening. He's going there, they're going here. What's he going to do next? And that's fun. But I think perhaps when the world is calmer, this movie will be more appealing to more people. Because I think we're all dealing with a lot right now. And there were moments where I went, I'm going to pause this and get myself some ice cream because it's really grim. Because that's the kind of basic human being I am. So we're coming up to time here. Are there any other thoughts anybody wants to say? Paul, you've been doing a lot of pantomime and moving and shaking. I guess your audio isn't working. Perhaps a thumbs up, thumbs down. How would you review it? Double thumb. He's big fan. Double thumbs up, and they're moving. There it is. I think it's one of the best movies that Netflix has put together. I would say. There are loads of great movies that Netflix has made in of themselves, but I think this is one of the good ones. And when knowing my friends as well as I do, I'm going to look forward to recommending it to the right people, because I think there's a lot going on here.
Have you thought about which film for next month yet?
We have the movie Rocks is currently on the table. I'm going to look it up for you now to give you a few more details. Now, Rocks is a coming-of-age movie that came out in 2019. It's going to have our first female director, which is shamefully far too late in the process, but we're making up for it now. It's a British film. It's about teenage girls in Hackney, and you may be pleased to discover that it's just 93 minutes long. The White Tiger was over 2 hours. You know, time doesn't matter. But it's got loads of great reviews, loads of people saying how much they love it. Currently, Rotten Tomatoes, which likes to be the grand arbiter judge of movie goodness, maybe the right word, maybe the wrong word, gives it 97%. Again, it's called Rocks.
Sorry, when you say Rocks, how's that spelled?
ROCKS.
Oh, I had to get that right. Okay.
Great. Yeah, it's not like it is someone's name, but it's Rocks. Lots of 5-star reviews, and it will be interesting to tackle something set in Britain and set now. We've been in America, and we've been in the past. We've been sci-fi. We've been to India. It'll be quite nice to just have us more or less now here in London. And interestingly, it's mainly non-actors. And that's kind of interesting to see that sort of thing. Anyway, again, Rocks will be the film, and we're going to let you know which date exactly it will be next month. It won't be exactly a month away, but it will still be a Thursday. Any more before we say goodnight?
So we can't watch the Rocks at the moment. We can't watch it, can we?
You can if you like. Yeah, it's on Netflix.
Okay, that's all right. Yeah, that's all right.
Yeah, if you want to watch it tonight. I don't think anyone's going to stop you. Just remember to take notes, because I don't want you forgetting next time we speak. You're like, oh yeah, which one was that? I don't remember any rocks in it. All right, guys, I think that's all she wrote. Thanks for joining us. Nicole, I always appreciate your thoughts. I'm sorry about the feedback. Liz, Ananda, Hasmukh, thank you. Thank you.
Bye.
And see you next time. Bye.